St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church in Kolkata functioned as an isolated training ground for women seeking a life of spiritual service. Here, they lived under strict vows, separated from the distractions of the outside world. When 22-year-old Maria arrived, she appeared vacant and detached. She didn't share the religious enthusiasm of the other trainees, remaining silent and avoiding eye contact with both her peers and the Mother Superior. Late one night, a fellow trainee named Roma peered into Maria's room, finding her in a wooden chair with limbs contorting into impossible broken angles. In the dark, Maria began muttering in a layered, masculine voice that sounded like multiple people speaking at once. Mother Superior Agnes attempted to intervene with a silver cross, but Maria remained immune to the holy symbol. She leaped from the chair with feral speed and violently attacked Agnes, sinking her teeth into her arm like a wild animal. Maria's physical distortions and violent outbursts suggest a targeted supernatural invasion rather than a standard psychological breakdown. The events at the convent indicate a force that specifically sought out this environment. Father Steve attempted to purge the entity using holy water, but the liquid acted like a corrosive acid. The very moment the droplets touched Maria's pale skin, they left behind deep, blistering burns that sizzled against her flesh. The shock of the burns left Maria temporarily lucid, but physically shattered. She had no memory of the attack on Mother Agnes and lacked the strength to even sit up in her bed. During her subsequent relapses, Maria began speaking rapidly in ancient languages she had never studied. These linguistic shifts occurred without warning, replacing her own voice with the sounds of unfamiliar, long-dead tongues. The entity inside her possessed an active intelligence, waiting for a specific trigger to reveal its actual objective. It wasn't simply resisting the ritual, it was biding its time. By Friday night, the church brought in Father Edmund, an elite specialist, to perform a full, unsanctioned exorcism protocol to finally remove the presence. The team bound Maria to a heavy wooden chair, encircling her with tall white candles and silver crosses. Father Edmund began a continuous cycle of Latin prayers, attempting to pin the entity down within the circle. The entity responded with a show of dominance. Instead of shrinking away from the prayers, it let out a single piercing scream that extinguished every candle in the room simultaneously. The presence then shifted its focus away from Maria. Mother Agnes, who was standing nearby, suddenly snapped her head up as her eyes flooded with pitch-black darkness, serving as a secondary vessel for the entity's voice. The ritual failed to expel the spirit. Instead, it became a supernatural interrogation, turning the church leaders' own bodies into tools to force a hidden institutional corruption into the open. Through the voice of the possessed Mother Agnes, the truth of the previous year emerged. Maria had been a joyful choir singer, involved in a forbidden relationship with Father Neil, a man who had vowed his life to celibacy. When Maria became 4 months pregnant, Father Neil grew desperate to protect his public standing. He viewed the child not as a life, but as a scandal that would destroy his career and the church's reputation. This timeline shows Maria's pregnancy cycle intersecting with a medical intervention authorized by the church's official seal. During a midnight storm, Neil and Agnes conspired with a nurse to force Maria into premature labor. Following the path from the medical ward to the graveyard reveals the final act of the conspiracy. While Maria was told her baby had died, Neil and Agnes carried the living infant to the church grounds and buried it alive in an unmarked grave. Maria spent her nights wailing at the sight of the grave, her psyche slowly shattering from the weight of her grief. This emotional trauma created a void within her, drawing the attention of local dark entities. The vengeful spirit of her murdered child, accompanied by other entities, used Maria's grief as a doorway. They took residence in her body, waiting for the moment they could confront those who had buried the secret. As the confession ended, Father Neil was summoned to the room. The moment he crossed the threshold, the supernatural energy in the chamber reached a violent peak. An invisible force seized both Father Neil and Mother Agnes, violently yanking them toward the ceiling. They hung suspended in mid-air, unable to move, as the entity took full control of the room. Speaking through Maria's broken body, the entity issued a final decree. It demanded absolute retribution for the crime committed against the infant, calling for the conspirators to face the same terror they had inflicted. The extinguished candles suddenly reignited. The flames detached from the wicks and flew through the air, engulfing Father Neil and Mother Agnes in a localized fire that burned them alive while they were still suspended. This targeted execution provided the justice the human institution had denied. The spirits didn't cause random chaos. They systematically destroyed the individuals responsible for the infant's death. In the wake of the deaths, Maria was hospitalized and eventually recovered. Both the City Holy Church and St. Mary's Sacred Heart were permanently closed as the scandal became public. Father Edmund survived the ordeal, but his faith in the priesthood was permanently damaged. He remains haunted by the memory of the ritual, living with the knowledge of what his colleagues were capable of. The events at St. Mary's suggest that the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones crawling up from hell. They are the human authorities who hide their crimes behind holy robes and institutional power.